My homage to the titans of anime today, we finally have an anime retelling of an anime called The Unimaginable Adventures of a Reborn Nobleman, if there is a manga on this anime.
But you and I will already start our viewing the orphan boy turned into a famous person later. He knows that his death was a mistake, so the gods made him a vessel by doing everything possible to achieve maximum status.
Shirin is a young guy going to the store at night. He has lost all his relatives and currently lives alone. However, as soon as he approaches the store, he notices people running away from him and two girls bumping into him. They are lying flat on the ground, and the main character notices what is happening there. Some crazy criminal brandishes a knife in front of everyone and promises to kill them. At first, he tries to run away at the same time ordering the girls to run too, but notices that the girls are too scared to move. He rushes at the madman and pushes him to the ground. He tells the girls to hurry up and leave until they notice that because of his bad luck, the criminal instantly stabbed him right in front of their eyes and ran away. The girls hurry to look at him, but it's too late. The boy is already breathing his last breath. The girls can't believe their eyes and are crying, but he is glad that he managed to save them despite the fact that after that they cried in the end. He resigned himself with his fate and suddenly woke up to find himself in a chick bedroom, lying on the bed. He thought he had survived and was in a private hospital, but when he looks around, he sees a maid and a random woman. The maid starts crying his master Cain, and another woman immediately hugs him, and another woman immediately hugs him and asks if he recognizes his mother. He's okay, but he still doesn't understand why the hell they always call him Cain. He doesn't know what's going on and who these women are, and more importantly, who this guy in the mirror is, as expected. He starts to worry where he is, who this guy is, who these people are. Calming down, he begins to realize that this is his business, and the women will explain that he slept through the hole a week after he was bedridden due to fever. These two leave to cook him some food, and looking in the mirror, he understands what is happening and understands that now he is Cain, the son of a noble man, and more importantly, now he is living his dream at last. He is reincarnated into another world. Cain is shocked by this revelation. He wanted to catch the criminal, but then he was wounded alive and died, but still not all hope is lost. He really would like to be reincarnated into another world someday. And most importantly, he found out about his pestle size, and at that moment, Sylvia caught him in, not at the moment, from which he shifts even more. Sylvia has been trying to keep him up to date since he fell into a coma. He learns that he was born into a noble family that governs the territory of Gracia, and that he is the third son in the family Silverford, judging by the furniture around him in the mansion in which he is located. He also understands that his family is very rich. He also has two brothers, one sister and one stepmother. Later, he wants to go outside and see what's going on. There, he asks Celia when he can go outside, but she will tell him everything about the territory of the Forest of Monsters and Adventurers, as well as everything else. He is thrilled that he died in his former life, and Sylvia tells him that he could become a wizard when he grows up to get rid of monsters. So excited that he wants to try magic immediately, but Sylvia tells him that people can use magicians only after they turn 5 years old, so he needs to wait at least 2 more years when he turns 5. He has to go and get a blessing from God to finally use it. But he's too excited to wait 2 years to try magic. He wants to do magic right now. So he wants to find a way to use magic as soon as possible. But first he has to master the very basics, like learning to write and read. And it wasn't a difficult task for him because he was in high school, and his parents are starting to think it's weird because he's changed a lot since he woke up. He gets furious, but explains that he was just doing his best to study. And that's when the father says that since he is the third son, he is literally doomed, and he has no rights when it comes to a family heirloom. Cain takes this opportunity to then ask for books about magic and the world around him. His sister doesn't like it because she can't use magic, but he secretly uses magic so that people don't notice him. But nevertheless, he can't let down his guard because his sister has a younger brother complex. She tells him about the world around her and the history of magic. She tells him that their kingdom was formed by a random guy whose name is also Japanese. She tells him about all the different races of the elf, dwarves, and animal people, and he literally lives his dream. And now 2 years have passed, and now that he is 5 years old, the day has come when he will visit the temple to receive his blessing. They all leave the house together and get into the carriage to go on a journey. Cain is happy that they finally realize their magical status and dare to go on the road. He asks his sister what the status screen looks like, and she shows him it. He carefully studies her profile and sees the level of her magical power. He sees that she is obsessed with him and almost suffocates from trifles. She's embarrassed, but he distracts attention to her magical levels of 2 points each. His father tells him even more about the levels of magic they are given by God's blessing and range from 1 to 5. Soon they reach the temple. They go inside and the ritual begins according to the will of the gods. The priest pronounces a spell, and Cain is looking forward to his magical status being revealed to him. Suddenly he hears someone laughing and sees a bright light behind the statues of the gods they. Next second, he opens his eyes and realizes that he is in the world of the gods. One after another, many others appear godlike people. They are glad that Kaina has finally turned 5 years old because an eternity has passed since they waited. They call him by his real name, Shin. They introduce themselves to him and explain how he ended up in this world. In fact, this is another case when a mistake occurred. He should not have died. The maniac should have stumbled during the beck and then be arrested. But the man decided to become a hero and went for it, so he died for absolutely no reason. The gods thought he was a good guy and decided to reincarnate him in this world. They intended to seal his memories, to avoid those associated with changing diapers and other things. But in the end, he somehow awakened them. Cain thanks them for giving him the opportunity to preserve his memories because he did not have any relatives in his home world, and the memories of this makes him appreciate his family even more. Each of the gods is getting closer to him. They give him their blessing and promise to meet him again. Upon returning to the temple, everyone comments this light and the possibility that it may have been blessed by all the gods. His father is delighted and asks him to show his status window, but Cain knows that something is wrong. He means that God, the creation of Dare, told him that he has a little gift for him. This suspicion makes Cain pretend to be sick and run away from this place, just to hide and look at his statistics, and to his surprise, he turned out to be right. And when I say that all the indicators are maximum, I don't mean the 5th level. He already has a whole 10th level, and he also has an S rank despite the fact that he is only 5 years old. But fortunately, this old god had enough common sense, and he gave a magic spell that allows him to fake the window numbers of his status. Later during dinner, his father will throw him to show the window of his status. He pretends that everything is normal at his level between the 1st and 3rd, which is already too strong for a 5-year-old child. Of course, everyone immediately gets shocked, and if you think about it, he has more than 30,000 magic power, which is 300 times stronger than the best magicians in the country. All members of his family are so shocked that his father is too big for him. He never shows his status knowing that he is much stronger. He will explain what will happen if Cain shows off or makes a wrong move. He will be considered a threat to the whole world and put under surveillance. Returning to his room, Cain begins to realize his mistake and that he should have lowered his indicators even more. But then he notices a book on summoning magic. He has always been interested in summoning cute animals and playing with them, and he decides to summon something outside. He proceeds to the ritual to summon something fluffy, but what comes out of this circle does not look like a fluffy at all. Since this is a demon for some reason, his sister and the cat girl are walking on the street at this very moment, and the demon is preparing to attack them, and Cain rushes to stop him standing in front of them. The demon screams from the girls. Squeal, it makes him realize how he tried to protect the other 2 girls of his past life. He rushes forward again. He uses his fire magic, jumping on the beast from above, and is about to strike him. But the demon hits him with his fist, and while he is being beaten, gathering all his courage, he utters a spell that returns the demon to where he came from and saves the situation, and the girls rush to his aid. To be honest, I still don't know where this cat girl came from, and neither does he, because he just pronounces cat ears instead of her name. His sister is torn apart, and he lies and thinks that he is dying once again for protecting 2 girls, and he did not have the opportunity to touch the cat's ears. The girls cry even harder as he begins to close his eyes, accept his death, until he just gets up and realizes that he is not dead. He doesn't even have any injuries on his body. His sister cried a little more and then smiled and hugged him, which made him realize that in his previous life he could only make other girls cry. But this time, everything will be different. He will protect the smiles of everyone present. During the banquet, he introduced himself and talks about his desire to explore the world and become an adventurer. The story continues after Mick's declaration of wanting to be an adventurer to help people and protect everyone's smile. His father Garm tells him He needs to study more for that, so he will be getting him a tutor. Unlike in the real world, this news makes Kane really happy, and he looks forward to it. Laying on his bed, he thinks about who the tutor could be, a muscular one, or maybe a witch, or could it be, thankfully, the anime tropes are on his side. Soon Sylvia calls out, "They're here," and Mick immediately jumps up, running to the window and teleporting outside. Unfortunately, his teleportation sends him several feet up in the air, and he falls onto the unsuspecting melons below, which prevent him from taking fall damage. The woman who his face is buried and asks him if he wants her melons, though he won't be able to get much from them. The butler then introduces the two girls as Mrs. Millie and Mrs. Neela. His tutors, oh no, he's already made a weird impression on them. This introduces himself too, but keeps the rest of the details to himself. After all, he's a reincarnated aristocrat who is given max stats by every single god. He can't tell anyone that Ms. Millie, the redhead wearing armor, nervously presents herself to Garm due to his rank as an aristocrat. She's a D-rank adventurer who works as a tutor. Her partner, the greenhead, Nina, is an elf, and some sort of mage Mick tells them not to use honorifics since he wants them to be closer, and his father, Garm, reveals they will be tutoring him for 3 years. The group immediately heads out for training. The first thing they focus on is swordsmanship out in the courtyard. Millie tells him to try a few practice swings while she watches, but even a few practice jabs are apparently too much since he's literally firing off machine gun blows that would put Genos to shame. "It looks like he's stronger than you," Nina remarks. Embarrassed, Millie proclaims she won't lose to a 5-year-old kid before stepping up and telling MC to have a sparring match with her. MC dearly takes her on, but she already has trouble deflecting his blows when he activates his god mode. Millie has no chance and begs him to stop, saying if he keeps going like this, she won't be able to keep up. Her partner, Nina, speculates he has the blessing of the god of war, and they're amazed someone who was baptized only a few days ago has this much power. With their sparring at an end, Millie happily takes the chance to have a break and instead transfers Mick over to Nina. "I have the blessing of the god of magic level 3. She says so. Let's start with the basics. At this point, you've got to almost feel bad for these tutors." Mick wanders over and pipes up, "Oh, I can do that already. I practiced it in the book." The book then asks. Confused, Mick proceeds to literally tear up the floor, casting water ball, fireball, and rock bullet. He says it's all he can do for now, but evidently his lack of understanding really shows itself despite not thinking he did much. Tina comments he's using chantless magic. It takes tremendous training just to shorten the chanting, but to be able to do chantless magic at 5 years old, what a genius. It's Millie's turn to praise Kane now. So she brings up how he seems to be using all element magic. That's impossible. 9 are remarks, not even a sage-class royal court magician can use all attribute magic. Moreover, that power they'd look at the hole Mick has just blasted in the walls of his own castle. And Nina asks him if he has the blessing of the god of magic. The two girls sigh in frustration as they realize there's not much they can actually teach him. "Oh, can I offer you a nice towel in these trying times?" MC asks, using his item box to retrieve a blanket and item box at this point. Those two don't feel they can be surprised anymore. "Kane, you're a genius," they say. "We can't teach you anymore. We can't teach you anymore. We can't keep up with you." Mick does have something he wants, though. Requests they take him outside Silky can touch grass. He's never been outside the mansion since he was born except for his baptism, so he wants them to take him outside to practice magic. The two of them agree, but have to convince their father Garm. First, the trio goes back inside where they meet with Garm and telling they can't teach him more without harming the mansion. He's gotten that strong already. "That's my son, Kane," Sarah remarks. "So my Lord Millie says we would like to teach him outside the capital from now on." Garm consents, but on the condition that MC returned before sunset and remain careful, accompanied by his mentors. May goes outside and tests his intermediate magic, which blows up a large boulder. Unfortunately, this explosion doesn't send him flying into their melons, but Nana recognizes his magic is beyond the intermediate level. Surely he's tired after casting a high-level spell, right? Surely there are some limits to his strength, right? Nope, of course, Mick's amount of magic power is off the charts, and he doesn't feel fatigued at all. That's unbelievable. The girls cry, "Who is this boy?" Exactly, just then, a killer rabbit runs out and charges Mick, who easily takes it down with a cast of air bullets. You can sell its parts if you want. But what are you going to do with it? They ask. MC summons his item box and stores the slain rabbit in there. "I'm going to show it to my parents and my sister," he says, watching this make Millie a bit envious, and she tells him She's going to buy a magic bag when she can save up the money when NC asks about it. She tells him there are magic items that can do things individuals don't have a talent for. In this case, it allows the user to essentially simulate having a magic box ability. The trio then goes and searches for killer rabbits. With Nina using her magic to detect their presence, Kane asks her how she did that, and she tells him, you can channel your magic power breath of the wild style to locate anything with a magic power of its own. He tests search out and detects the 4 rabbits 300 meters from here. What normally you can't even use it on your first try, much less detect the exact number. Millie rests a hand on Nina's shoulder and tells her to give up on Kane. After all, he's already so much more powerful than them. The trio easily defeats the rabbits, but one of them turns tail and disappears into the forest. When Ma goes to chase, they tell him to stop since it's full of strong monsters. Once every few decades, they run amok and many monsters attack the city. That's why the city had such a great outer wall, Kane. You must become a strong adventurer so you can one day defend the city. With only a few rabbit kills, and C has somehow ended up at level 8, which was due to the premium X buff the gods gave him. Mick has to keep this a secret, too, to avoid getting placed under state control. If I had a sponsorship with Nordvan, I would play. And here, the next day, the trio dropped by the local Adventurers Guild, and meet Rudy, the Dog Girl Guild receptionist. Mick introduces himself, saying he can't register as an adventurer due to his age. Another adventurer comes over, harassing the pair, and using his standing as a C-rank adventurer to bully them. He tries to force them to have a drink with him, but naturally, MC stops them, saying he has a training session with them, and requesting they leave them alone. A short but extremely one-sided fight breaks out, and Mick throws the C-rank and his gang out the door, then gets a nice hug from his 2 tutors. The group then goes out to train in the field and outside the forest before eventually returning back to their mansion. Thus 3 years soon pass, and Mick is now 8, wondering if he can do anything to pay Millie and Nina back for the past few years. He remembers Millie wanted a magic bag and decides to grab some monster materials to craft the magic item running into the forest. He was explicitly told not to enter. Kane easily defeats a bloody ogre and then an earth dragon, but his attacks caused such a commotion, the spotters on the wall ring the alarm, sending the fort's garrison out to try and stop what they think is a monster invasion. Their court mage finds it strange. They can't detect any more monsters, and when they see the massive blast hole in the ground, Garm sees a handkerchief Kane had accidentally left behind, realizing what had just happened. Meanwhile, the next day, Kane is showing off by defeating swarms of wolves. In front of his tutors, it's their last day with him, and they head over to congratulate him. He's essentially graduated now. Mick takes out a pair of bags for the girls' magic bags he made himself. The red bag is from the blood ochre, and the red one is from the earth dragon. He calmly says, I tried to moderate the magic I put in, too. The 2 are surprised, but even with his moderation in crafting, the bags are capable of holding an entire mansion, which would put it easily at a national-level treasure. We'd be attacked if people knew about this, they say. Of course, Mick has thought this through and has built a security system where the weight of the bag's contents would be doubled for any imposter Mick proceeds, to give them a heartfelt speech thanking them for teaching him for all these years. But before he realizes what's happening, the 2 girls kiss him on the cheek, making him blush furiously. We'll see you again. They say, if you ever need help, we'll be there. Thus ended the contract period with the 2 of them, and Mick became just a little bit more mature. And finally, he'll be able to start his heroic journey, blasting apart everything in his way for him. The story continues with Kane doing a dungeon exploration when he comes across a high-level looking dragon. The creature attacks, but he dodges and swiftly ends the fight with a downward blow. He falls along with the dragon and pokes it with his blade to make sure that it has been defeated. The noble can't believe that he defeated it so easily, as it seemed like a tough one from its appearance. He sheathes his blade in his item box. Before checking his stats, he opens it and begins to panic that he leveled up too much. His magic is over 80 million points. He has also been given the aliases enemy of all monsters and dragon killer as a result of his hunt. 2 years pass after this event, making Kane 10 years old. As per the country's customs, he must head to the royal capital to make his debut. This is a mandatory event that all noble sons must go through. So they head there as a family. His sister holds on to him when she thinks about living with her brother in the capital in the future. She suggests that he should just take the entry exams and start attending school. Their father, Garm, informs her that school attendance starts at age 12, so he has to More years, Cain asks his older sister if she's excited to start since she's of age, and she confidently informs him that she will take the #1 rank in the school's exam. He can only give her his support. The conversation changes topic when Cain asks his father how long their journey to the capital will take. Garm answers 1 week. But that's with the assumption that no monster will be getting in their way. Cain advises himself to stay on high alert for any attacks so that he can help the guards if need be. He uses his search ability to scan the area for any potential threats. He quickly informs his father that there is a battle. Going on 3 kilometers ahead, Garm is more surprised that he can read that far ahead. He gives further detail that there are a few dozen monsters that have swarmed around 10 people. Their father informs his men to pick up the pace. He also sends 2 guards ahead to help. Cain notes that judging by the speed at which they are riding, they will not make it in time. He decides to go ahead and jumps out of the moving carriage to his parents' horror. He uses wind magic to soften his landing before activating a boost spell that allows him to cover the distance in a ridiculously short time. Even the guards don't realize it's him. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the humans are on a serious back foot as many soldiers lay injured and worse. One of the last men holds his ground, determined to protect their carriage despite being surrounded by man-eating monsters. Just as the creature approaches the carriage, Cain appears and gets to work immediately and takes out the closest threat to the precious cargo. He then dashes across the battlefield, defeating monsters with consecutive 1 hit blows. Their numbers are still overwhelming. As some manage to get close to the carriage, Cain hesitates to use magic because the knights will get caught in the crossfire. So he summons his sword and swiftly dispatches the orcs, leading the general, which he also defeats. With a fire and both the sword with the threat averted, he makes his way to the soldier for a wellness check, but the soldier warns him to stay away from the carriage. Cain realizes that he failed to introduce himself, and does so. They ease up a little when they hear that he's the son of Margrave Garm. This is further confirmed when the dispatch riders finally arrive and are surprised to see that Cain has sent all the beasts to Valhalla. The guard collapses due to his injuries. Cain rushes over and uses a high-level healing spell to restore health to all the injured soldiers. On the battlefield, simultaneously, he uses his item box to store the bodies of the ones that didn't make it. His dad also arrives shortly after and announces his intention to assist. But he too realizes that everything has been taken care of. As he asks them to fill him in on the situation, his attention is taken when he notices the crest on the carriage. As the door opens, he gasps and shows respect, as does his son Gar. Reveals that the young ladies standing before them are Princess Celestia and Miss Silk, who is the daughter of the Duke. He expresses his relief that the girls are safe. They recognize him and thank him for coming. Garm notices that the girls are shy to talk to Cain without a formal introduction, so he prompts his son to state his name. Celestia collapses from all the stress, so Cain offers to calm their mind using magic. Looks like this. Lil Mofo, as an answer to just about everything, he casts a relaxing spell that removes all the burdens from the girls' hearts, making them feel lighter. Now that they feel better, they express their interest in Cain as they introduce themselves and thank him for the save they inform him that they saw. His excellent performance from the carriage window. The lad already gets overwhelmed when the 2 ladies begin to fight over him. They ask him what brings him all the way out in the middle of nowhere. He tells them that he's on his way to the royal capital for his debut. They reveal that they too are on their way to theirs. They plead with him to travel with them as they drag him into their carriage. He calls for his father, who just watches on, confused. The carriages begin to move together as Cain sits in between the girls to make them feel safer. He notes that it's a bit cramped as they sit close to him, so he tries to move to a different seat, but they don't allow him. The girls continue to fight for his attention as they now want him to address them by their first names. He is hesitant initially and even struggles to say, given their status in society, but with some coaching, they get him to do their bidding. Their interaction is interrupted by one of the Margrave guards, who tells them that they are approaching the town of Renoma, so they should prepare to disembark. Cain thinks it's a disaster when he finds out that the guards saw the interaction. After a short while, they arrive at their lodgings, and Cain excuses himself, hoping to see them again. The next morning, the girls wanted to spend the night with them. They say that they are still shaken by the ordeal and want him around for extra security. Graham overhears and pleads with them
to reconsider since it's a bit inappropriate for them to share a room. The girls repeat that they are. Extremely traumatized and are worried that the monster might attack again during the night, the royals don't want to take no for an answer. Since Cain is the strongest among them all, they want him as their protector. He is left with no other option but to agree, though he wants the room to be big with. His bed space, very far away from theirs, like the true Sigma he is his father, warns him to be careful and remember who he represents. Night falls and Cain enters the room. He's a bit disappointed that the beds are so close together. The girls make him take the middle bed and move them closer, essentially. Making one giant one, they claim that they are scared, so that they can get closer to him, and it works. It has been several days since that first night, and Cain hasn't had a wink of sleep because he has been too nervous to relax. It shows on his face, as he has giant bags under his eyes. After a few days, they finally arrive at the royal capital he gets. Excited seeing the royal palace, and when they exit the carriage, they are greeted by Vice Captain Gazard, who expresses his deepest gratitude to Cain for saving the girls and some of his men. He has already been informed of his feats, and is impressed Cain uses this as an opportunity to remove the one. That didn't make it from the item box so that their families can mourn properly. The vice captain thanks him on behalf of all the families. Cain just wants everyone to know the bravery that they displayed in the face of 50 orcs. Gazer promises to make sure that not only the families, but their fellow knights will hear the tale. With that settled, Cain prepares to leave, but the vice captain holds him and notifies him that he has an audience with the king. This shocks him because he has only just arrived in the capital not long ago. Gazard leads him to the king's hall, where nobles already line the area. He makes his way to the king and shows respect before he is instructed to raise his head. The Duke begins to narrate the dire situation Silk and Celestia found themselves in, and how Cain single-handedly defeated all the orcs, including the general. The nobles begin to mutter among themselves till they are told to be silent. Some of the nobles step forward in disbelief that a child was capable of such a feat. The Duke announces that the crown wishes to reward him before handing over the floor to the king. He begins by commenting on his outstanding work, as he is certain that if he wasn't there, the girls would not have survived. With this in mind, he gives Cain the title of Baron. He will also be granted 10 platinum coins and a mansion of his own. The other nobles can't believe that a 10-year-old has been granted a peerage. One salty noble named Corgino speaks for the crowd as he protests the king's decision. Cain feels the same thinking. He's too young for such a title. But the monarch asks Corgino if he could even perform such a feat, and when he's not able to answer, the king tells him to skedaddle back into position. The boss then turns to Cain to hear his response. He knows he can't reject the title, so he accepts it with gratitude. The king is happy to hear this and concludes the audience. He orders Cain to come backstage for a more private discussion. He is escorted to a room with his father, who is surprised that his son has been granted a peerage. Despite being the third son, he's the first to be promoted. They stand when the king walks in, since it's not a formal audience. He instructs them to sit. The monarch thanks Cain once again, even bowing to show his appreciation. The father and son stand in shock. Silk's father also shows his appreciation, but Cain pleads for him to raise his head. The king feels like he needs to express his gratitude as a father to the father and father to the father. Son, sit, as the king begins to discuss his future. Cain excels in both magic and the sword, and he has the protections of the gods. He's the equivalent of a nuke in our times as such. There is no way the kingdom will leave a talent like that to their own devices. That is why he made him a baron. It means he will receive payment according to the official regulations, since his mansion has to be maintained. The king tells him to talk to his dad if he has any questions about nobility. He also expresses his wish for him to take to Lester's hand in marriage. The Duke also wants the same for Silk. This surprises Cain, but it makes the girls happy. The monarch explains that they will be engaged till they reach adulthood and then get married. They try to make him take responsibility, since the girls have already expressed interest, but it is revealed that this speech was all part of their game plan. The poor lad looks over to his dad for his opinion, but he just turns his face away, which doesn't help the royals. Pressure works because he agrees to marry them later on at home. His family is happy about the marriage, but shocked at his antics on the road to the capital, so he apologizes. That brings the episode to an end. Cain in the capital's church, he makes his prayer, which transports him to the realm of the god Xenon, lets out a Santa Claus-style laugh as he comments on Cain's return.
The young lad apologizes for taking so long and tells them that he kind of overdid it in the early stage of his life with that in mind. He wants to consult them about his stats. Xenom admits that his current numbers are inhuman, which makes him more worried. The head god states that his life experience has yet to catch up to his current skills. Even with that said, in his current state, he is likely the most powerful human in the world. He even offers Cain the option to become a demigod. This would put him in the same class as holy beasts and divine dragons. However, he warns him that in his current state there are limits to what he can do alone, so he shouldn't test those limits. The Xenome changes the topic of discussion to a lighter note as he points out that there isn't much entertainment in their realm, so he suggests that he uses his knowledge from his previous life to create something. This gets Cain thinking that maybe if he could introduce items that don't exist in his current world, they would likely become popular. Xenome agrees with it. Thoughts as he can read them, which startles Cain a little. The merchant god joins to ask if he can do it. Cain later returns to the world and is forced to accompany his mother and sister while they shop for clothes. But he's not comfortable in the shop, so he escapes as he dashes out. He spots Parma outside and rushes over to say hello to her. He tells her that he's in the capital for his debut ceremony. She informs him that she's under training in her uncle's shop. Her uncle Timanes comes out and comments on how responsible Cain looks, and his niece informs him of Cain's nobility, which causes him to apologize immediately for his casual address. He doesn't take it as an issue at all, but he does want to take a look at the shop. After his inspection, he comments on the variety of goods that the shop produces. Cain believes that Timanes is capable of executing his idea, so he tells him of the recreational item he'd like to make. Cain wants to know if he would be willing to produce and sell it. He draws it out and explains the details for him to see. The merchant comments on its entertaining yet simple concept. Timanes believes that he could make it at a very affordable price. He is eager to get started on the production. This gets Cain excited, but he wants a prototype of it first. The guy leaves him with a gold coin to cover the expenses. Timanes gets up a little shy, as it is too much for the task that he has set. Cain puts him at ease, explaining that he should think about it as an upfront investment. When put in that context, he gratefully accepts. He promises as head of his company that he will give his all to the project. Cain leaves the shop happy, but his mood quickly changes when he sees his sister a little upset that he didn't stay to comment on her dresses. She begins to complain, but he gives her a compliment that melts her anger away. She doesn't let him off the hook as she tells him that when they get home, he's going to comment on each outfit that evening. He sits there as she tries on different outfits, and he gives glowing feedback, making her happy at it. Later date, the maid informs him that Timanes requests his presence at the shop. He quickly makes his way there and is amazed by the quality of the work and impressed with the turnover time, too. The craftsman points out that it still needs some refining, but he made it his top priority to finish. Cain informs him that the Reversi game is exactly how he pictured it in his head. The boy suggests they have a little game to test it. He plays again with Parma while explaining the rules in real time. To them, Timanes get excited because he is certain that the game will catch on. Cain feels a little guilty taking the credit, since it's a classic game from his previous life. Parma comments on how fun it was to play and wants to have another game with such positive feedback. He would like to produce a regular version and a separate one for nobles. He is sure that the upper class would want a fancier looking product, but he wants the regular version to be something anyone can afford. Cain greenlights 50 noble versions and 1,000 regular versions for manufacturing. They can draft a contract to produce more as needed, which would be determined by sales. Timanes notes that his company doesn't have surplus funds. So Cain happily provides him with the bag, which surprises him with such confidence placed in him. He promises to do his utmost best again. Cain feels a little uncomfortable with the bow, so he pleads for him to stop, as it is only an upfront investment. Timanes suggests they draw up a contract and present it to the god of commerce. They take their sample to the altar and swear to the deity that they will each uphold their end of the contract. It gets accepted as it vanishes. This means that no one will be able to produce the same product for 3 years. Talk about a cool fantasy patent system. With things now official, Cain wants them to strive to start selling the product in the next month. He adds that he would like Timanes to prepare a more extravagant one, which will be given to the royal household. This takes the craftsman by surprise because he's only a mid-scale company, so for him to be given such an Opportunity is unprecedented. Cain is confident that he can produce one that will impress the king. He promises to fulfill that request. Parma comments that the young noble must have some amazing connections. He makes a mental note that the king is not his only connection. The fact that the reverse he said disappeared means that the gods are enjoying it in their realm. As he speaks, he makes his way home after his meeting, where he's informed that the debut ceremony is about to begin. He rushes to get ready and leaves with his parents. His father makes it known to him that since he became a baron, at the last audience with the king, a lot of eyes are going to be on him during this event. He warns him to watch out for the other parents who will try to introduce their daughters to him. He acknowledges the advice and promises to deal with it appropriately. Even his dad is surprised by his mature response. They arrive at debut, and Cain locks eyes with Corgino, who gives him a hostile look. He notices Corgino's son, who his followers the same age as him. As he proceeds forward, he's called by the Duke, who formally introduces himself, and his daughter, Miss Silk, the guy begins to riz her up to. The point that the Duke has to interrupt Cain's father explains his son's dangerous ability, and he kind of gets away with it. They excuse themselves just as the royal family make their appearance. The king gives a speech to inspire the next generation of elites and ends it with a posh past everyone, then lines up to give their greetings to the king and his family when it's Cain's turn. He introduces himself perfectly and compliments Telestra to the point that she gets flesh, causing the king to pull him up on his silver tongue. He just got the royal city boy's seal of approval. Cain turns his attention to the king and presents the reverse he game that he developed in cooperation with the Saracane Company. The king is interested, so he invites him for a private audience later, where he can explain the game and they can discuss his treatment of the princess. His dad wasn't aware of his game development project. Cain explains that since he has been promoted to baron, he was afraid that he might not have enough money to maintain the mansion, so he had to find other sources. His father understands his points with the important part. Complete his parents leave early to tend to some rounds. They encourage Cain to interact with some of the children his age so that he can feel like a normal kid. For once, his thoughts are interrupted when Silk comes over to talk to him. While they wait for Telesia, they take a seat and begin small talk, but Cain feels more comfortable with her dropping the master prefix. When calling his name, she begins to tease him, which makes him a little nervous. Habit come along with his friends and interrupts them. He greets Silk and gives her a compliment, expecting for her to reciprocate, but she just gets up and politely gives a lady bound to greet him. One of Habit's lackeys demands that Cain give his boss some respect by allowing him to sit with Silk without interruption. Since he's the eldest son of Corgino, Cain gets up and greets him before introducing himself as a baron, but the boy is misinterpreted as in telling them that his father is a baron, which is a lower rank than their father, so they begin to look down on him since he didn't give his last name. They speculate that he must be very low rank, so Habit orders him to apologize for his rudeness, or he will unleash his boys on him, his way of addressing. Cain offends Silk, so she tries to defend him, but Cain interrupts her, stating that it is Habit who will apologize first. He takes it as fighting talk and asks him if he wants to catch these hands outside. Silk sees that the situation is escalating and behaves like the damsel in distress to spite Cain, telling her that she didn't need to come there. Flirting starts to make Habit a little jealous, so he shouts for them to cut it out when he's speaking. He reveals that his two followers have the god's protection and can use magic. The first guy steps up and does the strangest pre-performance routine I have ever seen. After all that drama, he releases a fireball spell that is so pathetic that even a toddler could dodge it. The other guy does the same, but fires a rock bullet spell, which is equally as sad. As they prepare to attack again, Silk stops them and tells the trio that Cain is not the son of a baron, but is rather a baron himself. She feels that he's the third son of Garm, and he is the one who saved the princess and herself from an army of 30 orcs single. Handedly, the trio stepped back in shock because they heard about their age mate's achievements. She orders them to bow since he outranks them significantly. They plead for forgiveness for their embarrassing stupidity and excuse themselves. Silk finds the whole situation amusing. She confronts Cain about it, knowing that they were mistaken, but still let them act out so that the reveal would be all the sweeter. She comments that he has a dark side and promises to tell Telesia about it. He pleads for her not to, so she promises not to. So she promises not to say a word as long as he goes on a date with her. The princess overhears them talking about keeping the incident a secret and wants to know what happened. Cain holds Silk's mouth shut, which is seen as scandalous since they are not married. She uses this as leverage to find out the truth by threatening to tell her father Silk. Just reveals that they were planning on going on a date. This makes Celestia jealous, so Cain says that they can go as a trio to make her happy. The king interrupts and summons him for their meeting. While they play the game, the king enjoys it to the point that he wants to make it exclusive to him. But Cain alerts him that he intends to release it to the masses. The Duke is also around, so they both use it as an opportunity to warn Cain not to let it slip out, that he's to marry the princess and the Duke's daughter. He feels the pressure as they both stand over him, marking the end of the episode.